Hi, okay. It's Friday. I don't know if it's day two. I don't know how to number the days anymore. It's Friday. We have one more day of the conference. I was able to watch two talks today because I had to give two presentations. So I was a little bit busy during the day and I'm actually getting quite tired. There's a lot of information. And then of course, seeing other people and everything else, trying to socialize at the same time. So the first talk that I got to see was our favorite minero, Victor Hugo Medina. If you haven't heard of him, he's fantastic. I've watched some of his talks that he did with the IATEFL pronunciation SIG. Um, he was showcased for the Brest-Teasel pronunciation SIG at the conference this weekend, and he's fantastic. If you have a chance to watch Victor, he's really really great, and I've always enjoyed watching him. I think he's quite thoughtful, and I think he is very reflective about the things that he says, and um, and he's talking about aspects of pronunciation that go a little bit more that go a little beyond what we see in like the course books and things like that, things that would have a bigger impact. So I was really looking forward to it because um, actually pronunciation, accentism, unfortunately, it exists at a staggering rate in the business world, and so I try to beat into my students' heads that they need to focus on intelligibility as opposed to what what accent they have, and it's hard. It's an uphill battle. So let me go through a little bit of what Victor was talking about. The thing about Victor is his the slides that he uses, they're very minimal because he just knows so much, and so he can sit there and just talk, and then you get engrossed in what he's saying and you forget. And I caught myself a couple times that I wasn't taking notes because I was just, kind of agreeing with what he was saying. It was making a lot of sense to me. So he's a very logical person. I enjoy how he seeing the development of his ideas. It's interesting. So he started out by talking about intelligibility, and he was really focused on the lingua franca core by Jennifer Jenkins. So if you don't know who Jennifer Jenkins is, and you're dealing with English as a lingua franca or English as a lingua franca for business English, that again, you probably should look into Jennifer Jenkins. She put out the lingua franca core. And the lingua franca core has some key aspects in it. It's mainly focused on accuracy, but accuracy in a different sense because there's things that take priority in a lingua franca core. So, for example, if we look at the th sound, that has relatively um, low prior. I'm going to say priority, and that might be the wrong vocabulary to use there, but it has kind of a low priority because my good friend Felipe Lopez in Bahia, as he has pointed out to me, when he was in England for quite a while. I'm not sure where he was. I think he was in the northern part, but I couldn't be sure. When he went there, he has a kind of a stereotypical British accent. Felipe does, and actually Victor does. um, and when he was there, when he was there, he noticed that the English family, instead of saying think, they were saying think, and everybody was saying it, and he wanted to correct them, but people understood, and that's just kind of how they said it, and the th sound is actually not one of the priorities, but many people consider it to be. So instead of focusing on that, the lingua franca core would suggest that you focus more on aspiration, the difference between pig and big, and the difference in producing that with an aspiration. So that more relevant, we'll say, in the lingua franca core. Another thing that he pointed out is that parentheses, meaning adding an extra syllable to the end of words, if we think of the words like Facebook, right? So Facebook, yeah. So we're adding something extra in there, which typically isn't there. So there again, check out the lingua franca core, but that's kind of the idea behind it, that there's some things that we can prioritize that will enhance intelligibility, and there's other things in pronunciation where, while they are useful, in an international context, it might not be the best usage of your time. To You can use it, the list, as a priority. So going off of that, I am going to read from my phone. I apologize. When we talk about intelligibility, there are a wide variety of different accents. And there are, okay, so he cited several things. He cited Jenkins, Derwing, and Monroe in 2009, and Celsi Mauricia in 2010. I probably butchered that last name, but a wide variety of different accents. So there's boundaries to variation. So we can't have too much variation. There needs to be some boundaries. There is a native-like pronunciation bias, for sure. And that language features deserve different degrees of attention. And so he expounded on his vision of that and his view of that, which was quite interesting. And so under the idea of intelligibility, there is understanding, and we need to kind of understand what a person is saying. And he broke it down with three. Well, there's 5 people here. There's 5 authors, but Best and Tyler in 2007, we're talking about speech perception, which means you have the ability to be heard, like literally the person can hear you. There's Krachu Smith in 2008, and they posited word intelligibility, meaning the sounds in the words. So it could be like long and short vowel sounds in a word and that type of thing. And then also sentence intelligibility. This was by Schwartz-Haupt in 2015. And sentence intelligibility talks about like intonation. So what Victor was saying, like if you continue to go up in your intonation at the end of sentences, people think you're going to continue, that you're not finished speaking, or that maybe you are, for whatever reason, insecure or have some anxiety about what you're saying. So, hang on, my phone is dying. When we think about intelligibility and understanding, there's also another term to be used, which is comprehensibility. And this refers to the learner's perception of the ease or difficulty with which they can make out the speaker's meaning. So it was interesting because this is from the listener's perspective, not from the speaker's perspective. And if we're talking about intelligibility and accentism and pronunciation, we always think about our learners as speakers, but we also have to think about, well, what about the listener? So the comprehensibility, I really like this definition because it made me like, kind of maybe have to turn that around in my brain, with a bias that I might have had, that it refers to the it refers to the listener's perception of the ease or difficulty with which they can make out the speaker's meaning. And then he also talked about interpretability, which falls under the category of understanding. And that is a recognition of the purpose or intent of a word or utterance. Goes to like pragmatic understanding. And so finally, he kind of wrapped all of these ideas, these kind of keywords and ideas, up into a definition. So intelligibility is to create understandable speech. Speakers have to produce an intelligible utterance, which is also comprehensible, so that the listener can be able to interpret it. So what does that mean? We have to think about, on a much broader scale, how can we help our learners do that? And he posits, and I also second that, a lingua franca core would be beneficial to use. A couple of questions that happened along the way. I'm sorry. It's midnight. Tired. How does the way in which you pronounce words affect how people perceive you? And should it? And this is when we start getting into the idea of accentism. And another question that he posed was, does a non-native speaker have a negative effect on credibility as perceived by non-native listeners? So there was a couple interesting things. So first, I want to. There were questions that we were thinking about throughout his talk, and as soon as he jumped into accentism, it made a little bit more sense. There's a couple definitions that he gave us of accentism. One is using the language of different groups as defining criteria and as the basis for hierarchies. Making hierarchies. Sorry, it's too late for me to try and say that word. And then any situation in which an individual feels as though they have been unfairly judged, treated, or commented on because of the way they speak, write, or communicate more broadly. So we can see this, and we see this quite frequently. And he did have 4 questions here. So the ones that I told you, the non-native accent having a negative effect on the credibility, and a difference if perceived credibility where the speaker is from. And it was interesting because he showed us this. I don't know if it was a study. I think it was that they did in the Czech Republic, and that if the people, people who speak, they're Czech citizens that speak English, and they were listening to other people speak English, and if they didn't know where they were from, they gave the most credibility to, or believed British people first with a British accent, and then Americans. And the least credible people speaking in English to them were other Czech citizens speaking English, which is interesting, because obviously there's still remnants of colonialism in our society, especially when it comes to English. So it was quite an interesting it was quite an interesting talk, to be honest, because though I was labeled an intruder, but playfully, Victor is fantastic. I'm definitely on the side of non-native speakers in this debate, because it's really important that learners, that they know that they need to be intelligible, and that they'll always have their accent, or they'll have some sort of accent, because it is what it is. But that feature of their language does not determine credibility and other things. So yes, my question, we're just gonna throw it out there, would be, what does a native speaker sound like? I mean, they could sound like me, but that's not necessarily true. So I think that people need to start doing away with this idea of native speakerism and accentism, and it's not helping. It's creating more divisions, and I really loved the way that Luisa Tavio he approached it yesterday in his talk, that it's 2 different types of proficiency, but it doesn't really make, because I've certainly met, living in the United States for the first 25 years of my life, I've certainly met people that are not good examples of English speakers, and that I've for sure met many Brazilian teachers and teachers abroad, in Romania and goodness, Israel and Palestine. I've met several people from all over the world, and Germany and lots of different places, that have higher proficiency, in my opinion, than native speakers. So this idea that because you speak in a certain way, that you're more credible or that you have a higher proficiency is, I think it's just kind of a toxic idea that's still lingering around. So we need to start maybe just focusing more on intelligibility, lingua franca core, trying to get rid of accentism. And also, in terms of a business context, it's really important that we think of this because our students are going to be working in groups and teams, and they're going to be dealing with people from different places. And so not having that accentism is going to be very, very important. So I'd like to thank Victor because he's fantastic, and I have watched him a few times, and I've always been very impressed by him. I think the Czech Republic study that he showed us was revealing and surprising and saddening all at the same time. And I'm with him. So, Victor, if you need an ally to fight the good fight, I'm with you. I am not the intruder. I'm on your side. I'm on your team. So that's it for his. And again, his was intelligibility and accentism in the EFL classroom.